Welcome to a new world of entertainment. The ultimate film and television podcast. Featuring Mike Winkler, Alistair Englehart, Daniel English, Jeremy Larson, and Jason Kobasic. Created by friends. All film lovers. We feature in-depth discussions and celebrity interviews. This podcast is available on all major platforms. Welcome to the Lights, Camera, Action Entertainment Reviews Podcast. On this episode, our Saw Retrospective begins. Each week, we will cover 2 of the 8 Saw films. We will be doing in-depth discussions, so this podcast will include spoilers. This retrospective will be hosted by Mike Winkler and Jason Kobasic. And now, our discussion on Saw and Saw 2. Hello everybody, Mike Winkler here. Or should I say, want to play a game, everybody? In the words of Jigsaw himself. Mike Winkler here with Jason Kobasic. How you doing, Jason?
Doing good. How about you, Mike?
Not too bad, not too bad. I'm really excited to do our first horror retrospective.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested that we decided to start with the Saw series, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. I mean, God forbid, we started with one of the most lengthy horror franchises out there.
Yeah, I mean, like we had discussed, every year since 2004 up until 2010, they had a Saw movie come out every year for Christmas, so...
That's absolutely crazy. I mean, how many franchises do you know that will pull that off once a year?
Then again, how many franchises also should have realized their films should have ended a while back?
Well, that's true. There is a handful of those. We know there's many horror franchises that have been overplayed and are still wanting to continue somehow, some way, in some shape or form.
Like Saw.
Well, yeah, we're up to 8 movies, and we have a 9th film co-written by Chris Rock on the way and starring Chris Rock himself and Samuel L. Jackson. I mean, them two in a Saw movie, I never even would have imagined that.
No, I would not have imagined that at all.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why they decided to come out with another movie just after. It didn't seem like Jigsaw did that well.
Yeah, Jigsaw did okay. I mean, the box office for each Saw movie has been steadily declining, and I think that's why Saw 7 was the last. I know when they went into Saw 7, before Saw 6 came out, they said there was a plan for a 7 and 8, but 6's box office decline was not too favorable, so they said 7's it. We're going to fit up both of our stories into 7 and 8 and be done. But then all of a sudden, 7 did well with the 3D prices, and then 2 years later, I think 2 or 3 years later, we got Jigsaw.
No, it was actually 7 years later we got
Was
Jigsaw.
it really?
2017.
When did the final chapter get made?
2010.
It's really that old?
Yep.
Okay,
The
wow.
series has been out. It's going on 17 years this year.
Oh my god. My god, it's going on 20 years here soon. Oh my god.
Yeah, it's been around for a while.
Wow. And the next movie is called, get this title, Spiral from the Book of Saw.
I I don't know. Unless they're trying to go to that little spiral shape on Jigsaw's puppet.
I Your guess is as good as mine. I like to see what Chris Rock comes up with, especially with not being any comedy involved.
I'm afraid. But anyway, we're not here to talk about that right now. We're here to talk about the first two movies.
Yeah, maybe some of the first two are probably some of the best of the series.
Yeah, well, yeah, they were the first of the series. No one had seen anything really like this setup at all in prior horror movies before. It was innovative for the time.
Yeah, and actually, this you might be surprised by this one. Actually, Saw 2 actually was my first experience with Saw because when Saw 2 came out, I hadn't seen Saw 1, and everybody had kind of revealed the big twist at the end with with John being the guy on the floor and revealing the whole plan that he was always there and he came up with it. So I thought, I'll just go with 2 and just hit the ground running. I'll just, not watch 1. So actually, just 2 days ago was the first time I had experienced Saw 1.
That was the first time you ever watched the first Saw movie?
Yep.
How in the hell have you gone that long without watching it?
Like I said, when the twist was revealed to me,
saying,
I just ignored it.
Even with the twist, I would have gone back to watch the movie.
I should have. I don't disagree with you.
I
And
would
that's
say
why it was
the
time.
first one was probably my favorite out of them all.
Well, 1 definitely had the best story. It definitely had the best shock value, and the twist. I mean, I could see how nobody would have saw that coming.
Yeah. But then again, but this is also one of those, like, I'm one of the few that there are some movies out there, obviously, that even with all the shock value and all that, everyone has those few films that they could pinpoint, like when they watched it from the beginning, they're like, they can call it right from the beginning, like what the ending's going to be, what the shock twist is going to be.
Right.
This is one of those I look like, yeah, that he is behind it all.
So you knew?
I had a feeling from the beginning.
So you thought the guy on the floor was somehow a part of what was going on?
I had a feeling he was behind it all.
Wow. Applause to you, because watching it, I didn't really see too many hints given. Sometimes, like you said, at the beginning of a movie, you start seeing subtle little hints at the beginning that kind of give it away or give away a good prediction.
Oh, yeah, like they'll give it away, but obviously this one, they didn't really have a whole lot of that. But it was one of those that just like shot in the dark situations where I'm just like, yeah, he's behind it all. Watch, he's going to come up, he's going to rise up at the beginning of it. He's going to be alive, and he's going to behind everything. And what do you know? I mean, it was just like with the Lost series that was on TV for a good length of time. Like, my first episode watching that, like, it was about halfway through the series because I don't know, it never really fit my fancy of what I wanted to watch. And first episode tuning in, I'm looking at him like, I bet you anything that these people are all dead. That's the whole premise behind the show. And lo and behold.
Well, Lost is still one of those shows where it dumbfounds me because that show it added in so many plot points and just ignored things and just said, well, that's what just happened, so you just have to deal with it.
Oh, I know, but that was just also another case of one of those. It's like, I bet anything that these people are all dead. And that's what the series finale is going to end up being. That's going to be the big reveal. And once you know it.
Now, obviously, you didn't know that John Kramer was the guy, right?
No, I didn't know John Kramer was the guy. But I just had a feeling that, it was behind everything.
Yeah, because the John Kramer thing, I could see how that completely came out of left field because, I mean, they showed him one time in the whole movie before that point in the hospital bed just laying there. At that time, I would have thought of him as just being an extra in the scene with the doctor. That was pretty much how I would have saw it.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't think that it was John Kramer, but it was one of those that something in my head just clicked. Like, I bet you he's behind everything. I bet you he's not actually dead.
Well, they put a lot of emphasis on that body at the very beginning, and as I go back and look, I could see, okay, I could see where I could have definitely missed that, because they put a lot of emphasis on the shots there at the beginning of the dead body, and they're kind of filming his body from every which different angle. So they put a lot of emphasis on that at the beginning. And now that I go back and look, I'm thinking, so that's why they put a lot of emphasis on it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense now.
All right, so do you want to go ahead and start this one off here?
Okay, so we're at the beginning here, and this movie opens like right in the thick of it right away. No build up, no nothing. We open with the character of Adam waking up out of the bathtub, and he's in this dark room that ends up being this huge bathroom. And we get the doctor on the other side. We find out the doctor. He's also chained to a pipe like him, and they have no way of getting out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, both men find a tape in their pockets. Adam retrieves the recorder. Adam's tape urges him to escape, while Gordon's tape tells him to kill Adam by 6 o'clock or his wife and daughter will be killed.
Mm-hmm.
Adam finds a bag containing 2 hacksaws inside the toilet, which they try to use to cut through their chains, but Adam's saw breaks. And then Gordon realizes the saws are meant to be used on their feet and identifies their captor as the Jigsaw Killer. So
yeah.
That's how we get introduced to the whole premise behind Jigsaw.
You know, the movie first started, since I watched this movie after I've seen the rest of the Saw movies, I couldn't help while I was watching it to compare it to the other ones. And I think this is why this ends up being one of the best ones, at least, because where the sequels put a lot of emphasis on the flash and pizzazz of the editing work and the camera work and the traps, whereas this movie
put a lot more effort. It put a lot more effort into the story of John Kramer,
right? And whereas in this movie here, we are getting invested in the characters before we get any sort of gore or blood or trap or whatever. Where the other movies, they still have those little character moments, but not like the first film does it.
Yeah. One of the things that I liked about this whole series as a whole, though, was the premise behind all of it. Like, how Jigsaw's mentality changed, was to, by, some fucked up means and all that, but to essentially change these people's ways of living, like making them appreciate the little things, I guess.
Yeah, his overall philosophy of it all is not a terrible philosophy.
It's not a terrible philosophy. It's the way he executed that on people.
Right. You almost feel like, okay, his meaning is not bad.
Like, either die with your sins or, forcefully remove them from you.
Yeah, I guess if you take them dying out of the equation, his way of thinking wouldn't be totally wrong. He's trying to fix people and get them to realize their mistakes and fix who they are. It's just the sadistic way of that.
Which you find out more, like, that's the whole premise behind everything, was that in the last chapter. Look, yeah, that was this whole thing. You find the origin of how everything started and all that.
Mm-hmm. It's also interesting, too, that the character of Gordon, after we leave him at the end of this movie, we do not see him again until the final chapter, which I find to be very interesting because they don't really revisit his overall character arc until the final chapter.
Exactly. And that was another one of those cases where I'm looking, I bet he's behind everything too somehow. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Just something in my head was like, I bet he's involved in this in some way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
But I couldn't quite pinpoint, like, how.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, they pulled that off pretty well, and I found his overall reveal in the final chapter to be pretty convincing, and I think it was the appropriate way to end his arc, especially. But I like the way his character works in this film because his range of emotions is really all over the place. Because at the beginning, we're led to believe that maybe he is somehow involved. The way he's acting and behaving and how composed he is in the first 20 to 25 minutes, you're led to believe that maybe he's somehow involved. Based upon the movie beginning with Adam, you're led to believe that Adam is going to be the character you're going to root for. And that ends up being not really the case.
No, not at all. But yeah, let's go a little bit more into this. So they ended up discussing, how obviously they identified the captor as the Jigsaw killer, serial homicide murderer, testing his victims' will of survival through murderous contraptions as games, whom Gordon knows because he was once a suspect. And then it goes into the backstory that Gordon, while discussing the terminal brain cancer of patient John Kramer, was interrogated by detectives David Tapp and Stephen Singh, who found his pen light at the scene of one of Jigsaw's games. Gordon's alibi cleared him, but he agreed to view the testimony of heroin addict Amanda Young, the only known survivor of one of Jigsaw's traps. So we get insight into the later films about Amanda in this movie as well.
Mm-hmm. That definitely takes a big beginning to what we see of her in number 2. We got to talk about the fact that Danny Glover's in this movie.
Wait, Danny Glover was in this movie?
Yeah,
he was. Okay, David Tapp. Mm-hmm. I forgot about that.
I did not know he was in this movie until I saw it last week or a few days ago. I was like, Danny Glover's in Saw?
Yeah, I completely forgot about that.
I guess I shouldn't be surprised because Sam Jackson's going to be in it now. So I guess, I don't know. One of those obscure actors that I just would never have considered to even be in a horror movie, let alone Saw.
No, I wouldn't have ever expected it either. But hey, I mean, if you can pull out a role like that, then go for it.
I liked his character. I thought his character had a lot of layers.
His character was really good.
I actually would have liked to have seen more of his character, and I almost kind of wish they might have made him a character that might have been in future installments, because I thought that he was very interesting.
Yeah. No, it was pretty good. I liked how everything turned out with that. But yeah, what else do we want to discuss about this one?
The smoke screen of the orderly being the guy that looks like he's behind the whole thing.
Zepp.
Yeah, I mean, when I was watching the movie, of course, at this point, I knew that he wasn't the one that was heavily involved, but I was very, very impressed and very convinced, or I'm not impressed, but I was impressed and how they pulled off the reveal, because going through it up till the very end, I'm like, when is Kramer going to be involved in this? Because I know Zepp, is not the mastermind behind it all, and the way they pull it off and they execute it in the last 5 minutes.
Oh yeah,
I'm watching. I'm like, wow.
Well, that's one of the things that the Saw movies are good at, is those last 5 minutes of doing like the big reveal of the movie.
Yeah, it isn't until we get to the middle chapters where some of the reveals get a little bit eye rolling inducing, because they get to be a little bit like out there. But the first 2 movies especially do the twist so well, and even at the end of Saw 2, I mean, it all just makes sense. It all just comes together like a jigsaw puzzle, in a way. Yeah, you're right though. The twists are done very well in these movies for the most part, minus a couple of the movies. But yeah, that's one thing these movies do especially well.
But yeah, so going into the whole thing with Zepp here, obviously once the clock strikes 6, Zepp, since Gordon still had not managed to kill Adam, moves to murder Allison and Diana, but the former frees herself and fights him. The struggle attracts Tapp's attention. He saves Allison and Diana before chasing Zepp into the sewers, where he is shot in the chest after a brief fight. Gordon, only aware of the gunshots and screaming, is shocked and loses reach of his cell phone. In that desperation is when he takes the saw and saws off his foot and shoots Adam with the revolver. Zepp enters the bathroom to kill Gordon, but Adam, having survived the gunshot, bludgeons Zepp to death with a toilet tank lid.
Hmm.
And that's when we get into the big reveals here. Gordon crawls out of the bathroom to find help while Adam searches Zepp's body for a key and finds another tape, revealing that Zepp was another victim following rules to obtain an antidote for a slow-acting poison he was given. As the tape ends, the corpse rouses and is revealed to be John Kramer, the real Jigsaw killer, who reveals to Adam that the key to his ankle chain was in the bathtub that has gone down the drain when he first woken up. Horrified, Adam attempts to shoot John with Zepp's gun, but John electrically shocks him through his chain and exits the bathroom. John shuts off the light and seals the door, leaving a screaming and helpless Adam to die.
Yeah, the ending of this movie, it was actually quite the gamble, because I look at it this way. I think the writers had intended there to be more movies, but it could have ended with this one. It could have just ended with a shock ending, and that could have been it.
Yeah, you never know. I mean, they could have ended it just right there and not really gone into any other movies, but it was nice that we got a little bit more story out of the next few films.
It was, because I felt like there was a lot to explain, because we didn't really learn John Kramer's motivation in this movie at all. It was just like, oh, he came up with this plan. That's what he wants to do at the end. It wasn't enough. We needed layers to really understand him and to see a full-fledged story for him, which we do get. So,
yeah.
So I should ask, as we're at the end of the first movie, this movie actually ends up being the tamest of all the Saws, I think.
No, it really was.
But what's your favorite trap sequence in the first film?
Oh, I don't know. I'm gonna let you talk about that one first.
My favorite probably has to be when Tap's partner goes downstairs to chase after Kramer. At the time, we don't know it's Kramer, and he shoots him, and it looks like he's dead, and he's approaching, and he triggers that trap, and all the gunshots just blister on top of him, and he just falls to the ground all bloodied.
Yeah, that was a really good one. I forgot about that one. I might have to agree with you on that.
Yeah, I kind of liked that scene, because it was like the first big Kramer trick, the first of many tricks that we see of Jigsaw, and that was like the ultimate first one. And I like that sequence. I mean, this movie didn't have a lot of traps like we get in the future sequels. I mean, really, in this movie, all we have is that sequence, really, and where the doc saws off his foot. I mean, we don't really get a whole lot of that shock value in the first film, because, like we said before,
we really didn't.
The first film was more about the story and the characters than it was the actual traps and situations.
Which I thought was a good touch. I do like the innovation of the traps in the later films, but I thought this was really well executed, in that it wasn't all about the traps. After watching all these other films, that it wasn't all about the traps and how people were going to get out of them. It was about, these characters, the story behind them, and just the overall general story arc they were going for.
Right. And I think that's why, like you said before, it ends up being one of the best, if not the best, of the series, just because it didn't feel the need to focus on the gore factor to be entertaining like the sequels kind of do.
Yeah. And here's the thing about this one, Mike. What would you, without looking at it, what would you say the budget was for this?
About 4 or 5 mil.
1.2 million.
I mean, I believe it. I mean, other than maybe a few of the actors, I mean, most of the movie's shot in a few select locations, and it's stuff you could get at a hardware store.
Without looking, box office numbers.
Well, I'd say probably at least 40 to 50 mil.
103.9 million.
Oh, I think it might be the only Saw movie that actually reaches 100 mil, though. I could be wrong, but
we're gonna see here in a minute. No, there are multiple that hit 100 plus.
Was Jigsaw one of them?
I will let you know here when we get to that one, but I know that the next one trumped it.
Saw 2. Yeah,
Yeah.
I should have known that because the sequel hype was pretty big the next year. But I guess with that, I guess we just
Do we
devolve right
have
into Saw
anything
2.
else we want to talk about the first one?
No, I think we pretty much covered everything on Saw 1.
So, what did you think of the actors, though, that played these roles? Actually, before we get into Saw 2.
I mean, I forget how to pronounce his last name. Carl Lewis. I think Carl Lewis. I don't know how to pronounce
Carrie
his last name.
Ellis.
Yes. He's great. I mean, he's a great actor. He's good in everything that he's in. He's very underrated.
You see, the thing that surprised me the most was the fact that Carrie Ellis was in a horror style film like this. I am so used to seeing him in the Mel Brooks style movies, comedy movies, like Princess Bride, or in Robin Hood Men in Tights, that seeing him in a movie like this, it just boggled my mind, because you're seeing the depth of his acting here, and that he can do a really serious role like this really well.
He also played the Weasel stepfather wannabe in Liar Liar with Jim Carrey.
Yeah, that's true. He did.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, he's very much known for Robin Hood and Princess Bride, and this movie was definitely far and away anything that I've ever seen him in before. And he did a fantastic job, especially at the end when after he saws off his foot and how he's crawling around and his range of emotion. It was just superb. And he's definitely probably the best actor probably in the whole Saw universe, minus Jigsaw himself.
Exactly.
You know? But yeah, he was good. The guy that played Adam, I found his acting to kind of be all over the place. I saw some inconsistencies with some of his line delivery. He had moments where he was really good, but then he had moments where he felt like he was overacting a little bit.
Okay. I can see where you're coming from with that.
Yeah, but he's probably, more of a B actor that's just, maybe this was his first big role in something that was out there. So he's forgiven for that. And Danny Glover, of course, is always good in everything he does.
Could you picture anyone else playing John Kramer at this point, though, after watching this series?
No. Not convincingly, no.
I have to agree. I think just even seeing the little bit that we did of him in this movie, it just goes to show just what he is capable of.
Now, Tobin Bell is a fantastic actor, and I've seen him in little small parts and other things, but this is going to be the role he's most known for. It's got to be, because he's the face of the franchise.
Easily, yeah. He has got to be, this has got to be his most famous role at this point.
I mean, think about how much his influence and face lingers even after his character's death in the series. It's still very prevalent throughout. But yeah, I mean, he's just fantastic. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much Saw 1 in a nutshell. We'll come back at the end and we'll circle back with our numbered scores. But let's move on to Saw 2, the sequel to the box office surprise hit.
All right, so for this one, we'll start off real quick. What was the budget on this film?
I think Saw 2 was somewhere around $5
million.
Okay.
Box office numbers.
120, 130?
147.7.
Wow, talk about making a shitload of money.
Yeah, they made over 143 million more than what the budget was.
I don't think any of these movies, maybe minus the last two, any of them costed anywhere over 50 mil.
Yeah, these films were a lot cheaper than you would have expected to make. And for them to turn out as well as they did.
Well, I mean, the first movie, I mean, you could tell it's made on a cheap budget, but it works. It's for the kind of movie that it is. It just works. And even the sequels get flashier and they look more expensive, but really they're not much more expensive. It's just great directing.
And this is where I'm seeing a lot more of what we're known for seeing for the Saw movies, and that's the traps. Start at the beginning of this film when police informant Michael Marks awakens in a room with the spike-filled mask around his neck. and he has 1 minute to cut into his eye to obtain the key, but can't bring himself to do it and is killed when it closes. So we see the beginning of all of the traps really start with this film.
Yeah, right out of the gate. And if you notice too, throughout these movies, there's a lot of traps that have to do with things stuck on their neck or their head. It goes back to the first movie when we saw a little bit of Amanda having the contraption on her neck too.
Yeah,
very similar. But yeah, you're right. This is the beginning of what's going to be the long string of traps throughout these next 7 films. It's actually kind of funny because the movie that out of all of them that I compare closely to number 2 actually is Jigsaw, the 8th film, because it's the other Saw film where there's a group of people trying to get out of an area, like in Saw 2.
Okay.
So I think there was definitely a lot of influence from Saw 2 when they made Jigsaw.
All right, which makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so from here we get introduced to Detective Allison Carey finding a message for her former partner Eric Matthews and calls him in. And correct me if I'm wrong, but was Eric the one that was the quote unquote apprentice of John Kramer in the later films?
Eric Matthews? No. Because
I know we saw the guy in prior films beforehand. That's why I was curious.
The first time you see that character, I think, is in Saw 3, because then I think he's in 3, 4, and partly in 5. He's the one in Saw 3 that ends up becoming the apprentice of John Kramer, because he comes in after Amanda finishes her storyline. But the female cop, she did appear briefly in Saw 1.
Okay.
She was in Saw 1 briefly. I couldn't really remember. I was watching Saw 2, and I was like, she was in 1. I believe she was, and she was. She appeared in one scene in Saw 1 when they took the guy out of that wire trap.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. She was in that part, and then that was it. So some of her callbacks in this movie about how she's been chasing Kramer for, was it 4 or 5 years? That was, I guess, in reference to that. Which, one thing I didn't understand in this movie, I don't necessarily know what the time in between each movie is. They make it seem like the time is very minimal, like maybe days or weeks in between each other. But she talks about in this movie about how she's been chasing the Jigsaw killer for 4 or 5 years. Are we led to believe?
Because the other, like, I know at least in the case of 3 and 4,
mm-hmm.
they've essentially took place at the exact same time.
Right.
But obviously it wasn't a matter of that. This was done all in a matter of days or weeks in between each other.
Mm-hmm.
This was, obviously this was a history of going before, like, well before the first film, because of how Gordon had said, how their captor was the Jigsaw killer. So that makes you realize that there's a good history before that first film. So it could have been years that she's been chasing him.
I mean, I think it would have to be, because I figured it couldn't have been years between Saw 1 and Saw 2 for a couple reasons. A, because Kramer had cancer, and he was very much on this dying breath for a while. And number 2, because we saw Adam's body in the bathroom at the end of the film, and it seems like that it would have been more the ashes or his body would have been more rotted away than in 4 or 5 years, than minus if it was only maybe a week or 2.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what I figured. It's just I didn't really know if you knew that per se, because they never really clarify how much time passes between a lot of them, except for like the middle films, which you said are really close together.
Like, honestly, all the films after 3 were all really close by, I want to say.
4 through 6, I think, were pretty much like within days of each other.
I think like 3 through 7 were all within days and weeks of each other.
Jeez. But yeah, I guess I don't know at the end of the final chapter. It's been a while since I watched the final chapter. I don't know if like with Gordon, I don't remember if they mentioned how much time between 1 and 7 is, because of course he looks older, so obviously there's got to be some time there gone.
I don't think it was much time though.
No, maybe a year.
Maybe a year, maybe 2 at the very most.
Yeah, I'll have to find out when I watch it again, because it's been a while and I don't really remember at all.
Yeah. But anyway, so Matthews joins Carrie and Officer Daniel Rigg in leading a SWAT team to the factory which produced the lock from Michael's trap. There they apprehend Kramer, who indicates computer monitors showing 8 people trapped in a house, including his only known survivor, Amanda Young, and Matthew's son, Daniel. The other victims are Xavier, Jonas, Gus, Laura, Addison, and Obi. Nerf agent filling the house will kill them all within 2 hours, but John assures Matthews that if he follows the rules of his own game, he'll see Daniel again.
I got a question for you, because I just finished watching Saw 2 again today, and it's a question that I still have. Okay, so Jigsaw says about this poison agent that was put through the house, right?
Yeah.
As we see throughout the film, a lot of them are bleeding out of their nose, they're coughing up blood, so on and so forth. But as we see, the detective's son and Amanda, they rarely ever cough and they rarely ever bleed from their nose, especially Amanda. So are we led to believe that they weren't really breathing the agent in that whole time, that maybe they were injected with it before they woke up?
No, I think that leads you to believe that they were given an antidote.
Okay, because I don't know.
Here's the thing about this movie, though, that pissed me off the most, is that if these people would have actually sat there and thought, like after they got out of that first room and got into the main room of the house,
right?
That door at the beginning, that first door, all they had to do was just open the filter, and all the nerve agent's going to go out of the house.
Basically, the pollution was right in front of them.
There you go. They would have completed the trap right then and there, and all they would have had to do is just figure out a way to get out at that point.
Well, that's the one thing about this movie that pisses me off too, is that they make a lot of stupid decisions. There's these big group of people. They have how many? 5 or 6 brains in this house, and I mean, when I first heard the clue about, the numbers are in the back of your head, I'm thinking, oh my God, did anybody think to look in the back of your head or your neck? I mean, he basically gave it to you right on the damn tape, and nobody thought to even think about the back of the head.
No, not at all.
They do a lot of stupid things. It's just like the guy hopping into the furnace, Obi, and the door closes when he grabs the thing. Knowing the situation they're in, why wouldn't somebody be holding that door open for him?
Because people are not smart in these situations, and you know that they're not going to be smart in this kind of a situation.
That's horror movies. Since when is any character actually smart in a horror movie?
Yeah, you're not wrong there.
Yeah. Okay, so I was curious about that.
So here's the thing that really just annoyed the hell out of me, was one of the first traps that were in that house. The group is informed by a microcassette recorder that antidotes are hidden throughout the house. One is in the room's safe, and the tape provides a cryptic clue. Xavier ignores a warning note and uses the key provided with the cassette on the door, which triggers a gun that kills Gus. Like, who in the hell puts their eye right up against something like that, knowing that there's probably going to be a trap or something on the other side?
That's what I was thinking, too. I'm thinking, dude, what benefit do you have to look through the damn peephole behind this metal door? Why?
Look, if you would have just stood away from the door off to the side like everyone else was, when he used the key on there and opened the door, well, guess what? The bullet would have just gone right through. No one would have been killed.
Yep. Yeah, like I said, this group makes one dumb mistake after the other, and I don't know if they're just have no brains or I don't know. I like this movie. It's just that it's hard to forgive stupid characters, especially when some
Yeah.
solutions are right in front of their face and it's just staring at them right in the face.
So one of the let's see, we talked about the uh furnace trap that Obi went into.
Mm-hmm.
In another room, Xavier's test involves digging through a pit filled with syringes to retrieve a key to a steel door in 2 minutes, but he instead throws Amanda into the pit. She retrieves the key, but Xavier fails to unlock the door in time.
Uh I found this trap to be one of Jigsaw's biggest bullshit ones. 2 minutes to go into a pit of syringes to find a small contraption to open the door.
Yeah.
I mean, he does say needle in a haystack, and in this case, it very much was. There had to have been probably at least 200 syringes in that pit.
Oh, easily.
And I hope Amanda had some kind of fix for that, because there was a lot of rusty needles.
Then throughout the game, the group ends up discussing the connections between them all, and they realize that each of them has been incarcerated before, except for Daniel, in which during his father's test, John reveals their affiliation to Matthews, who is a corrupt police officer framing his suspects in various crimes. So we see why that Matthew's son was put into the situation.
Mm-hmm.
It was really all just to test Matthews.
I mean, again, it goes back to a very, very good twist here. And Jigsaw's play on words where your husband will be found in a safe place and he ends up being found in the safe in the same room. Just very clever writing. And I like, too, how Jigsaw is written very smart, because the problem we get with a lot of horror movies today is that the villains they don't use their brains.
They're just in there for the thrill of the moment sort of situation where Kramer was very methodical in his approach, very detail oriented, very much into playing mind games with people. Mm-hmm. And he had the ability to do it because he had the mindset of, someone who was like a borderline genius in a sense.
Right. No, yeah, he does. I mean, the way he's able to make these traps and be able to, because think like in the first movie, his overall trap and plan in the first film was very generic, very basic. There wasn't much thought needed into that process. But this film really, it took a lot of thinking on his part, because he had to have the each room laid out the way it was in order to get certain clues, in order to get doors open, and this and that. There's a lot more layers to his thinking this time around. And I thought it was really cool to find out, too, that the house that this took place in was in the same facility as the bathroom from the first film.
Yeah. Then it's just, Xavier went on, he ended up finding out that the numbers were on the back of each person's necks and ended up going on this manhunt to find everyone and kill them and get the numbers. So that's really the big premise behind the last bit of the movie.
Didn't you think that it was a bit much that he was going around killing people just for the number? Don't you think that was a little severe, like almost like that it was just written in just for the convenience of adding more blood and kills?
Probably it seemed like that was the case.
Mm-hmm.
But having seen Xavier chasing his son, Matthews assaults John and forces him to lead him to the house. The tech team tracks the video source, and while Riggs' team searches the house, Carrie realizes that the game took place days before they captured John, until the timer for Matthews' game expires to reveal Daniel inside his safe, bounded and breathing in an oxygen mask. So this all took place well before they actually captured him, and it was essentially just all this nonsense going on.
So
leading them essentially on a wild goose chase the entire time, when in reality the game took place days before, and that Daniel was was locked in the safe, completely safe the entire time.
So another good question here is that, okay, so if Matthews would have played the game that that he was wanting him to play, Jigsaw was wanting him to play,
Yeah.
and he would have stayed there till the timer ran out, he would have found his son in the safe, and Jigsaw's plan never would have happened. Now, my question is Jigsaw was planning on what happened to happen, and it all went according to his plan. Now, if it wouldn't have, how would have Amanda figured into that plan if things would have gone the way he didn't think to go?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
I'm not sure, but I think what Kramer's plan was for Matthews this entire time was that the best option is to sit there and wait. I think is probably what he was trying to show him, I guess.
Well, I guess
because if he would have done that, he would have realized his kid was right there, completely safe and sound.
I mean, he kind of basically told him in a way in words, but
yeah,
I think he knew that he knew Matthews so well and knew that he was reckless and he had a temper problem and he was out of control. I think he knew that no matter what he did, he would get his way and he would get him to take him where he wanted him to go.
Yeah.
I have to wonder too how long Amanda was sitting in that bathtub, because she had to have been in communication with Kramer somehow, because she had to know that Matthews was coming, because she couldn't be waiting in the bathtub for forever and a day. She had to know that he was coming to be waiting.
Yeah. So we got the last bit here. Unaware of these events, Matthews enters the house alone and makes his way to the bathroom, where he's subdued by a pig mask figure, which is the iconic figure throughout this entire film, or throughout the series, really.
Yeah.
He awakens shackled at the ankle to a pipe and finds a tape recorder left by Amanda, who reveals she had become John's accomplice after surviving her first trap and helped him set up Matthew's test during the game at the house, intending to continue John's work after he dies. Amanda then appears and seals the door, leaving Matthews to die as John hears his screams outside and smiles. So you ended up finding out that, throughout this, that obviously Amanda was really behind Matthew's test this entire time. And this is where we begin to see, I think the biggest flaw of Amanda's character was that she made it so that way her traps were essentially unbeatable.
Yeah, it's a good point. Her traps were completely unbeatable, and that made her very much the anti-Kramer, because how can she really be the protege taking over for him when she's going about things the opposite from him?
Exactly. And one of the things that I do like about the ending here, though, is that it was the throwback to the first film. Locked, chained up to the ankle to a pipe in the bathroom.
And the final line with the game over. Yep. Yeah, it was a good callback. And but yeah, you're right. Over through and through. I still can't believe, by the way, I can't believe I didn't bring this up, that Mr. New Kid on the Block himself, Donnie Wahlberg, is in this movie, because it's another one of those things. I mean, Danny Glover was in the first one, and now you get Donnie Wahlberg, and this is really the last time in a Saw movie where we actually get actors we really know of, because like at least 3 through 7, we just kind of get actors we really never have seen before. When you see Jigsaw, you'll recognize a couple actors, I think, from different things. But yeah, I don't really know. Like, we don't really get any. Maybe you agree with me on this or not, but we really don't get too many overly notable characters in the next films.
No, that makes sense. So we don't really get anybody that we really know per se.
Yeah, not like what we get in the first 2 movies.
Yeah.
But okay, so favorite trap in Saw 2?
Favorite trap in Saw 2 is going to go back to the beginning, first one that was in there. It was essentially the Iron Maiden mask.
Were you almost hoping he was going to cut the eye open?
Yeah.
I think everybody was a little bit on that situation. My favorites. tough one. The fire trap I thought was pretty good, although I'm really pissed off that nobody held that door open. I think that whole thing could have been avoided. I think I have to agree with you. I think it has to be the opening trap because that seems to be the most innovative one and the one that's most clever. We do get more that are clever in later movies, but yeah, in this movie too, a lot of things are just kind of generic ways to get to the point of killing off characters and such. So yeah, I guess it's obviously got to be the beginning.
So I'm gonna say, well, let's go after this here. So far out of the first two movies, which one was your favorite?
There are things in both films that I like a lot. If I could combine some of the stuff from the second into the first, that would be the ideal Saw movie. I think I'm going to have to give it to the first film just because I like that it focused on characters a little bit more than just the traps, and that it still had one hell of a twist in it. But the second movie, don't get me wrong, the second movie's twist is still really good.
Yeah, it's still really good, but yeah, you can't beat the first one in that case.
Yeah. No, I agree. If I gave a number grade to Saw 1, in comparison to this series, this probably would be the 8.5 to the 9 of the series. And then Saw 2 would be probably a 7.5 or 8.
I give the first one compared to the rest of the series a 9. The second one I give a 7.
Fair enough. Yeah, I wish I could give a higher grade to 2. It's just some of those character flaws and some of the stupidity, I think, brings it down a little bit. And I blame the writing more so there because I think they were writing more in convenience of advancing the plot than they were to actually give the characters some intelligence.
Yeah.
So,
but hey, that's to be expected.
It's a horror franchise at the end of the day, so we can't expect everything to be bright and smart and intelligent.
Yeah. But, oh well. So, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up here. We'll be doing this over the next few weeks. We're going to be doing 2 movies for each episode. Next one, expect 3 and 4. Probably going to be doing the same thing. We'll be doing it a week apart each time. So expect next week another episode coming out for the retrospective for Saw. And then after we are done with the retrospective, we're probably going to be looking at getting into the best of with the rest of the group.
Yep. Yeah, we're hoping to have all 5 back for that. We did get some news that our other co-host, Dan English, has come down with COVID. So we're wishing him
the best of health, luck, and speedy recovery.
Yeah, we're hoping to see him next week. We're supposed to, so we hope we will still see him next week on the show.
And then after we get done with this retrospective, we're probably going to be jumping into either the Matrix retrospective, or we will be jumping into, what was it that we were also discussing?
Well, we know with Matrix, Jeremy had suggested Jurassic Park, and Dan had suggested The Mandalorian. So
The Mandalorian is going to be the one I think we wait for after all of the retrospectives are done in this case, because
probably a better idea.
We're probably going to be going over each season. Or are we going episode by episode?
Dan had kind of an episode by episode idea. So that's probably going to take a little bit of time. We're talking 10 episodes of seasons. We're talking 20 episodes, but we're probably only talking like 20 to 30-minute episodes at that rate. So maybe we're best off doing 2 episodes at once.
Got a comment here from your mom, Mike.
Here we go.
I think you should go back in time and do Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh, yeah. Going back to old school. We were talking about horror franchises. Nightmare on Elm Street would be interesting.
If we're going that route, I mean, we could always do Friday the 13th, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Omen.
Ooh, The Omen. I mean, you got The Exorcist, too. The Exorcist is... The Exorcist actually has 3 films, but, I mean, you have a prequel that's not that good and a sequel that's not that good, so I don't even know if that's even worth delving into.
No. Really, it's just the Exorcist itself that you'd really delve into, but it's not really
Right.
worth it at that point.
No. But yeah, I mean, that's a great idea. I think classic horror franchise, when you go into your Friday the 13th, your Nightmare on Elm Streets, and your Halloweens, yeah, those are things that we should definitely honestly do. Probably better reserved for maybe doing like around Halloween. Halloween I think would be a lot of fun to do some of those. Maybe cover those kind of in bulk for Halloween specials.
Yes, you are not wrong there. Nightmare on Elm Street did have a lot more of a storyline than the Friday 13th movies.
Yeah, and the Friday the 13th movies got a little carried away with Jason Goes to Hell and all that other stuff. So yeah, Nightmare at least stayed on kind of
And
a straight
if we're
path.
gonna go on horror franchises that had a storyline,
Mm-hmm.
I'd say the next one would be either Nightmare on Elm Street or the Halloween movies.
Yeah, Halloween's not a bad idea too, because we are getting a new Halloween movie, I think, in October, as long as everything holds up with movie theaters. So that would actually be a good time to get into Halloween because there's a new film on the rise.
That is true. So do we have anything else you want to add in for these first two movies, Mike?
No. Like you said before, just next week, look out for our best ofs and surprises, and then also look out for Saw 3 and 4 we'll be doing with us two as well. So that'll be fun.
All right. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Jason Kobasic here with Mike Winkler, and this is the end of the part one to our Saw retrospective. Expect part two next week, and I guess we'll end this with that's a wrap.
Cut and print.